we have community councils who are members of community out and about around the province, and oftentimes, the thought is, well, what can we do in our community as a council to build these kinds of communities that you're talking about? What would you suggest, or what ideas do you have about how to start building those connections, that social capital?
I think the fact that you have the councils meeting already is a great start. I think it's kind of the same thing would be true of individuals, would be true of councils, that a lot of times what we need to do is make visible. I think John McKnight has a quote, make visible the gifts that are present in neighborhoods. And I think that's true of a lot of times when we gather. And I think a great way to start is any kind of public gathering. And if you have a group of citizens, neighbors, and people that are gathering already because they care about something similar, they care about this group, what a way to get started and to begin paying attention, just have conversations. We've started a group in Vancouver called WHAM, kind of an acronym for We Are Many. And just whoever shows up, we're paying attention to what are the gifts that are present in the room, building relationships with one another, and looking at ways, what can we do to build more caring community, wherever it is that we live, and looking at what do people in the room care about, how can we support members of the group in doing that, and are there collaborations, relationships that we can build that maybe people in the room know that we're just not, that we haven't made visible at this point, that we can pay attention to and look at taking some action and building relationships with others who care about the same thing. So I think that the groups of meetings, tremendous, getting, maybe kind of throwing away what typically is more formal agenda and paying attention to what the people in the room care about. What are ideas and ways based on our gifts that we could build a more caring community? I think a lot of times, sometimes with these groups that we're looking at focusing on how do we build inclusive communities, we're not a whole lot of people. That language I think is so important. Not a whole lot of people care about that. If we're building a more caring community where each of us has a network of friends, support, people to be there for us in a way that we can share our gifts in neighborhoods, I think that's what everyone wants. If we can pull together a public group where we can talk about that, talk about ideas to do that, I think that's a way councils could begin looking at doing something that would really do some community building.
So you don't have to start out with a big project in mind. You don't have to have some kind of intention to kick this off.
No, try something small. Figure out what's the passion in the room, what do people in the room care about. Who could we pull in that might care about the same thing? What are ideas people have? Because I'm guessing if you have a room of 10 or more people, boy, the relationships people have, the ideas people would have, the invitations that people could offer to others in community to be a part of what anyone would want to do would be numerous.
How do we go about invitation?
Just ask. I think that's any of this, especially when I first went in. The gentleman, I'll stick with the same guy, started taking him to church on Sundays and introducing him to people and looking at, okay, I'm taking him to church. He doesn't have much transportation that works effectively to get him here. How might he get here without me? Well, I could invite someone else in the church to, would you mind giving Jim a ride? He loves the church. Just asking people, because typically I'm amazed when you're asking people about things that they care about, most times your invitations will be accepted, or people will have another idea for you that maybe this isn't going to work for me, but go talk to Mary down the street. She's really passionate about this.
Right.
So I think it's just kind of breaking down our fear, maybe,
right,
and asking people.
About in terms of the community and in making it more of a hospitable place and building hospitality in community. Are there ways of doing that for community councils, or in general, do you have some key elements that you see about doing that?
I think when I first started doing this kind of work, I was thinking that was our task, is to build radical hospitality. And I think that was even a kind of a tagline, sharing radical hospitality, practicing radical hospitality. I think what we quickly found out, it was there, we just weren't seeing it. And that there are places we go into that are inhospitable and not very welcoming, but those are few and far in between. And we don't need to change them, because we found out that, okay, we want to make this place more welcoming, more inclusive of all people. Go around the corner. There's a hospitable place there. Most people are hospitable and welcoming, and there's tons and tons, and we would track that. What we call radical hospitality, where they welcome strangers. And more often than not, that's typically, I think, what you find. I think if we go to we have an agenda of changing that, we probably got the wrong agenda. Probably just need to identify the places and connect with them and build relationships, because I think there's tons and tons of them out there.
If you were on a community council right now and they were saying, well, where do we start? Right now, how do we start? What would be your suggestion?
Well, that's working with the WHAM group met last week, and we've gotten to know each other over the course of a couple months, just doing some community conversations with each other, and again looking at what kind of action do we want to take. And probably in a 10-minute, 15-minute discussion, they identified maybe 100 things, that from everything from hosting neighborhood movies to neighborhood cleanups to community potluck dinners. The ideas were wild, and looking at who in the room cared about which, and what do we want to try. And within another 15, 20 minutes, began looking, okay, we have 5 or 6 people who care about this. We have another 5 or 6 who care about this. Let's do it. Who wants to take a lead in getting that going? Are there other people we should invite? And I guess my suggestion would be try something. Identify some possibilities, because anytime you get anyone together, and giving up the fear, and I'm probably the worst about this, is doing something that you think that you're going to have success, whatever that is, when you implement it, versus anytime you pull together a group of people, it's probably going to be a success. And we're going to get to know people, we're going to get to know each other, and that's probably the main purpose, just identifying any kind of activity to pull neighbors and citizens together. We can spend time with one another.